Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Minister K. SHANMUGAM, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Law, Republic of Singapore. Good afternoon, Minister and Mr. SHANMUGAM, Ambassador Gopinath Pillai, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Institute of South Asian Studies, I warmly welcome you to today's event. To start off, it is my pleasure to invite Ambassador Gopinath Pillai, Chairman of ISAS, to deliver the opening remarks. Ambassador Pillai, please.
Good afternoon, Minister SHANMUGAM, Mrs. SHANMUGAM, Excellencies, my colleagues on the board of ISAS, Satpal and Dr. Nasir, my ISAS colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a special day. It started off as somewhat of a small event. It was going to be a tea party to thank the ambassadors who had participated in our ambassador series, which was the brainchild of one of our senior colleagues, Dr. Iftikhar Chowdhury. But as things will happen, we decided we will use that opportunity to release our first annual report of ISAS. Then, as things progressed, we tried our luck to see whether the Minister for Foreign Affairs, as the main stakeholder of ISAS, whether he would be kind enough to accept this annual report. And he very kindly said yes. And then, of course, we very sneakily asked him whether he could have a dialogue. And he generously accepted. So we had an event which was originally supposed to be rather small, come to this stage. And I'm very, very happy that the Minister has been kind enough to come to this event and also bring Mrs. SHANMUGAM. Dr. Sita SHANMUGAM herself is quite a keen observer of world events. So we were very happy to have her as well. And we are all happy to have you, every one of you, for participating in this. Let me give you a little background on ISAS. ISAS had somewhat of an unconventional birth. I think it was in 2003 that the Prime Minister, when he visited India, announced that there was going to be an Institute of South Asian Studies. I never imagined at that time, I was part of the team in India, but I never imagined that the chairmanship of the board of management would be mine. But 1 year later, 2004, then Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Mr. Heng Swee Keat, who is now Minister for Education, told me that his minister, Mr. George Hu, would like to offer this job to me. I thought it was rather odd, because the chairman of a think tank or a research institute should be a scholar, somebody from the academia. And here's a chap who is mainly a businessman and a part-time diplomat to look for this job. So I thought about it, and after some trepidation, I accepted that position. In my language, there is an expression, to be an ant in heaven. To be an ant in heaven. Now, the ant is not supposed to breach the sanctified gates of heaven, but it managed to get into heaven. Now, the gods could squash him and finish him off, but then gods being gods are godly and kind, so they allowed him to stay. So then what was his role? His role basically was to be a bit of a nuisance, to go around to make sure that the gods were not lulled to some sort of complacency, so that they all sit back and relax. So he goes around, maybe a nip here or nip there, to keep the gods alert. So I decided that this would be a good role that a chairman like me can assume. And so I became chairman. In the first meeting I had with the then provost of the university, who is now president of the university, Professor Tan Tai Yong, he explained to me the procedure of selecting a director. He said we would have a search committee, we would have a headhunter, we would advertise, and we would, eventually select somebody. Now, in that bunch was also a young professor who was then Dean of Arts and Social Sciences, Professor Tan Tai Yong. So I agreed with everything he said, but I said, could I, while you are searching for this wonderful director, have the services of Dr. Tan, Professor Tan, for maybe 6 months? To me, Professor Tan was a good scholar. He had a PhD in Indian history from Cambridge. He specialized in Punjab, which straddled both India and Pakistan. He had good access to the academia in India. He knew how the university works. And above all, he was free because the university paid his salary. So I got him for 6 months. Now it is about 8 years, and Professor Tan is still with us as director. The same story was with our head of research, Dr. Narayan. I met him when he came as part of the Indian delegation to Singapore on some mission. And then I used to follow his columns in the newspapers. And I had my beady eyes on him. I kept sort of in touch. And when we had this opening, I saw him to his misfortune, saw him at a wedding reception in Vizag, and I told him how exciting it would be to build a new institute for South Asia. Such an institution did not exist in Southeast Asia. So he was persuaded to join. So we had the first core of our team, and we progressed from there. So that's the beginning. Today, we have a very good team of researchers, not only from South Asia. We have from India, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan. We also have from outside. We have from Australia, we have from Canada. We have done quite a lot of things. We have published a number of books. Some of them have been launched in India, and our guests of honor in these receptions have been extremely good. People like the Vice President, the Chairman of the Senior Security Advisor of India, and sort of thing. We had a symposium some 3 years ago, the first symposium of Singapore in New Delhi. We had a second one just recently last year. The first one, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was a guest of honor. Second one, Prime Minister was a guest of honor. Prime Minister of Singapore. There was a good effort to do a symposium in Islamabad. One of our senior scholars, Mr. Javed Burki, used to be Finance Minister of Pakistan. He wanted to organize. But a bit of cowardice on my part, I decided that I'll postpone it for a while and go on that sometime later. But we will do it. And we'll do it in Bangladesh as well. We have, as I said, published a number of books, and we have been very well received, and I'm very happy to acknowledge the contribution made by the various researchers in ISAS. They not only brought knowledge, but they brought with them their network of contacts, which have been extremely important to us. And therefore, we developed very quickly. Even when we started with 2 people, which was in 2004, by the time we officially launched in January 2005, we had already got several projects on stream. So similarly, we are going full steam ahead on various projects. We have got a study going on northeast India because of the connectivity through Myanmar to ASEAN. Minister SHANMUGAM had visited Assam, and we followed this up with a meeting, and Tai Yong will vouch for it, how enthusiastic the people of the region were to see us do this study. So we are going to do that study. We have been successful because of our research people. We also have a very dynamic admin team, because all the events you can plan, but if you don't execute them properly, then things fall flat. And we have a young man, Johnson, who's in charge with his Johnson's Angels, like Charlie's Angels. All young ladies, he's a bachelor, so he's got all young ladies on his team, and they do a damn good job. Now, one of the most important contributions has been from our stakeholders. We have three main stakeholders: Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as I said earlier, Ministry of Trade and Industry, and then the University of Singapore. They have been unflinching in their support to ISAS. And all the wonderful things that we have done have been possible because of the very strong support we have received from them. We, sometime in 2011, July, I think, we did the first South Asia Diaspora Conference. This was inspired by our then President, Mr. Islam. He suggested this to us, and we did it. It was quite successful. The next one will be in this year in November, and we hope to get even better participants and larger numbers. Now, when you get the annual report, you will see a message from me, and I entitled the message as the unfinished story. I did this on purpose because I feel there is much more to be done. We want to be not purely a research institute. We want to be an institute that links South Asia with not only Singapore, but Southeast Asia and East Asia. We also want to provide a platform for robust interaction among the diaspora of South Asia. South Asia has a very large diaspora outside, second largest after the Chinese, and a very successful, but their interaction is somewhat limited. Our purpose in doing this diaspora, this thing, is to bring about greater regional integration within South Asia. And we feel Singapore is the ideal location to have such an event. So these things are possible, and we will do them in due course. That's why I say that as of now, it's an unfinished story. So as they say, the best is yet to be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ambassador Pillai. May I now invite Professor Tan Tai Yong, Director of ISAS, to present to us ISAS Research Focus for 2013 to 2015. Professor Tan, please.
Mr. SHANMUGAM, Mrs. SHANMUGAM, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You heard from my chairman how ISAS started and how I got involved. In sometime late 2004, I was invited to what I thought was a free lunch with Ambassador Pillai and the Provost. And 8 years later, I've been reminded amply of the maxim that there's no such thing as a free lunch. So here I am, 8 years later, still doing the job of director. But I must say that it has been quite a pleasurable ride so far. It's been difficult starting a think tank, a research institute from scratch, but we've been very fortunate to have the unstinting support of my chairman, Ambassador Pillai, who not only tolerated my regular absences from the Institute because I had to do other things, but was constantly prepared to roll up his sleeve and be a hands-on chairman. I've also been blessed with a very dedicated, capable team of researchers who over the years have produced consistently high-quality research, and also a very capable team of administrative colleagues who made sure that events like these were always well run. For the next 5 minutes or so, I'm going to take you through some of the research areas that we've developed over the past years, which we have continued to grow in the next year or so, and share with you some of our outputs. Now, the first thing I want to emphasize is that ISAS is what we call TTRI, or for short, Think Tank Stroke Research Institute. We've always been asked, what are you? Are you a research institute or a think tank? And my answer is that we are both. Now, what is the difference, you may ask? Well, first of all, we are a university research institute, which means that our work must be informed by solid research, scholarly depth, and intellectual integrity. So this must inform our research. We just don't write papers just for the sake of generating output. So our scholarly inputs must be very deep. But at the same time, we don't believe in writing esoteric stuff that are theoretical that very few people will read. So in that sense, we are a think tank in that we try to generate information, knowledge, analysis that will be relevant and useful to a wide variety of stakeholders. From those that are core to our interests, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Industry, the various embassies, academia, research groups, the public, to anybody who takes an interest in understanding South Asia. So that is the mission that we have reminded ourselves of, and that is that we must do very good research, and we must make sure that we are able to disseminate research in a way that our stakeholders will find useful. So that's where we are. Now, over the years, our research team has grown. As Chairman said, we started with 2 researchers, and now we have about 24 researchers. We have young research associates who are cutting their teeth on research with us, to very senior research professors who are from very prestigious universities who are spending time with ISAS. And we have researchers from a variety of countries, not only from South Asia, some locals. We have them from Australia, Europe, Canada, and elsewhere. So we try to broaden our reach and try to bring a range of perspectives to bear on our research on South Asia. Now, over the years, we've also learned how to leverage on partners, because with 24 researchers based in Singapore, we understand that our reach, our interpretations, our understanding will necessarily be limited. So what we do is we try to leverage on partners from the whole world, where we can share some expertise, where we can have exchange of views. So, for instance, with China, we've tied up with research institutes in reputable universities so that we can have a fair exchange of views between researchers that are based here or from South Asia and those from China. So we will continue to grow these networks, because we believe that by growing these networks, we will be able to magnify and expand our research capability without having to build a lot of research strengths locally. So that's how we expand our work. Last couple of years, we've had quite productive output. Most of my colleagues have written not only short pieces in terms of insights, briefs for our stakeholders, but they've also gone on to produce deep scholarly research and publish them in chapters in books, in scholarly journals, or in monographs. So we brought up a range of monographs, and they cover a range of research interests from Maoism, Afghanistan, the Olympics, constitutional religious law, SARC, and so on. So the range and the remit of our research are pretty broad. In fact, when we did the book on Maoism, and it was launched by Minister Jairam Ramesh in Delhi, he made the remark, he said that why is such a book being written in Singapore, when obviously the problem is an Indian one, but he was at the same time amazed that we had the capacity to do this in Singapore. So that's what we'll continue to do. We'll look at topics which are relevant, important, and we'll do research on them. Now, very briefly, moving forward in the next 2 years, we have decided to focus our work on a few key areas, and this will essentially be multifocal in the sense that it's not a single issue topic, but a topic that has multiple dimensions, but are big enough and topical and important enough for not only South Asia, but for Singapore and Southeast Asia. So we will be looking closely at India-China-US relations. We'll have scholars looking at maritime relations and how this is going to be played out in the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. We also want to understand China's relations with South Asia, the South Asian countries, how they look at each other, and how bilateral relations may impact on other forms of general relations amongst the countries in South Asia. We will also be looking very closely, and this is our bread and butter, at developments in South Asia, both domestically and regionally. There will be a slate of elections coming up both at state and national level in South Asia in the year ahead. We'll be analyzing these elections and studying their impact. We'll be looking at the dynamics of youth, women in politics in the countries in South Asia, and also looking at how religion, citizenship, and minorities will be important factors in the development of the countries in South Asia. Of course, economics is one of our mainstays. We'll be looking at economic development, political economies, trade, commerce, and so on, and also looking at interstate relations in South Asia, how they relate to each other. Chairman has explained South Asian diaspora will become one of the key areas that we'll focus our attentions on. And here we are not interested merely in the traditional ways of understanding diaspora, and that is how people moved, resettled, and so on. But we want to understand how the diaspora will become a dynamic economic force for the countries of origin. So here the emphasis is on diaspora and development in South Asia. And one of the projects that we are doing work on are to study, for instance, how remittances from diaspora in the countries in which they settled are being sent back to the countries of origin, and how that has become a force of development. And in our South Asian diaspora engagement through the conventions, we hope to bring together diaspora business networks and to gather in Singapore and to look at how we can do more things to generate business opportunities in Singapore with South Asia. So that's another aspect that we do. And then South and Southeast Asia, we are located in Southeast Asia. Obviously, it is important for us to understand how developments in South Asia will have an impact not only on Singapore but on Southeast Asia. And here we'll be channeling our energies also in to look at India-ASEAN relations. A project which the chairman mentioned is on Northeast India, because the Northeast India is a very strategic location when you think in terms of connectivity between ASEAN and India, and also the relations between India, China, and ASEAN. So that's a region that we will be studying. And also we want to understand regional cooperation, of both regions, South Asia and Southeast Asia. So the regional dynamics that will be happening, for instance, in BIMSTEC or the Mekong Ganga development, will all be looked at by our researchers. And as we continue to do this research, we make sure that we keep an eye that our research bring about productive outputs. So our scholars continue to publish, and a few books that you can look forward to seeing that most of them already published. In the weeks ahead are books that are addressing Pakistan, maritime relations by Professor Raja Mohan, India in South Asia, India's foreign policy, India Today, a very good book by Professor John Harris on state of the political economy, and Cell Phone Nation, how the cell phone is revolutionizing relations, politics, society in South Asia. That book will be launched in India in about 2 weeks' time. So we will continue to do this research. We'll continue to produce useful research for our various stakeholders, And I want to say that all this would not have been possible without the support of MFA and trade and industry, and also our various stakeholders, the National University of Singapore. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, I think various embassies, for being such a good partner and friend of ISAS, and for always responding to our call to speak at our events and also at our institute's seminars. And I look forward to more regular engagements with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tan. It is with great pleasure that we now invite Minister K. SHANMUGAM and Ambassador Pillai on stage for the presentation of ISAS Inaugural Annual Report. Ambassador Pillai will now present ISAS Inaugural Annual Report to the Minister.